This is an ABC News special report.
I'm Wade Johnson in New York, and we're coming on the air with breaking news. Major developments concerning the classified documents case involving President Biden. Special counsel Robert Hur releasing his 345-page report on the investigation into those documents found at a number of properties linked to President Biden. The report highly critical of his handling of the materials, but saying, quote here, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would conclude the same, even if there is no policy against charging a sitting president. Our investigation uncovered evidence that President Biden willfully retained and disclosed classified information after his vice presidency when he was a private citizen." Now, some of those documents were found at an old office, others found at the president's home in Delaware, including his garage. The materials dating back to his time in the Senate and as vice president. The White House has already seen this report, we're told, and President Biden will not ask for any redactions. But the Justice Department may redact some parts considered classified information. Let's get right to our Chief Justice correspondent, Pierre Thomas, as we're dissecting all of this. But, Pierre, that key headline, no charges recommended.
Indeed, with the 345-page report lays out chapter and verse in terms of how President Biden and aides mishandled classified documents in the years before he became president. Some of the mistakes are described as egregious, but ultimately special counsel Robert Hur concluded that these were not prosecutable offenses. Hur takes great pains to lay out his reasoning. He also takes time to spell out how President Biden's case is different from that of former President Trump, who's being prosecuted by a different special counsel for allegedly mishandling classified documents. He says, quote, "Most notably, after being given multiple chances to return classified documents and avoid prosecution, Mr. Trump did the opposite." Hur goes on to say that Trump allegedly enlisted others to destroy evidence and lie about it. He points out that President Biden returned classified documents to the National Archives and to the FBI. And what DOJ officials are emphasizing is that Hur was once a U.S. attorney appointed by former President Trump and that he had complete independence in this investigation. Here's some more specifics. As you said earlier, he writes, "We conclude that no criminal charges are warranted in this matter. We would reach the same conclusion even if Department of Justice policy did not foreclose criminal charges against the sitting president." But some of what they found is damning, including evidence that Biden willfully retained classified materials after he left the vice president's office, and that some of those materials were classified, including information about military and foreign policy. There was also information about covert U.S. sources. Agents recovered the documents, as you said, in a garage, office, and even a basement. But Hur concludes that there was not enough evidence to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt with.
All right, Pierre Thomas for us. Thank you so much. Let's bring in our chief Washington correspondent, Jonathan Karl, who's here. We're getting this report. You're reading through it. Of course, John, all of this playing out as former President Donald Trump is scheduled to go to trial for a case of allegedly mishandling classified documents. But what are the key differences in these cases?
Well, there are key differences. But first, Whit, I've been reading through this report, and there are some significant findings here getting to what Biden did, why he retained these documents. And he retained them essentially to write two different books and to document his legacy. This is from the report. He used these materials to write memoirs published in 2007 and 2017 to document his legacy and to cite as evidence that he was a man of presidential timber. What were the documents? Well, some of them had to do with Afghanistan policy. Then Vice President Biden very much opposed a move that Barack Obama, the president, did in 2009 to surge additional troops into Afghanistan. So one of these documents included notes of a classified memo that Biden had written to Obama saying why he opposed it. So it gives you a little bit of a sense of what these documents are and why he had them. But here's a couple of very important distinctions. One, as soon as Biden was asked to return classified documents, he did. There's no obstruction of justice here. Just a reminder of what happened with President Trump. He retained boxes and boxes of classified information. He was asked by the National Archives to return official government records. He returned some. They found out those included classified documents. He was asked if he had any more. He returned about 38 more pages several months later. And then his lawyer certified that he had no more classified documents in his possession. Well, that was in May of 2022. August of that year, what happened? The FBI had reason to believe he had a lot more classified documents. They got a search warrant. They searched Mar-a-Lago, and they found that Donald Trump had over several boxes, 100 different classified documents that he had not turned over, that he had allegedly directed his personnel to lie about those documents, that he had directed an employee of his to destroy surveillance tape of surveillance cameras showing where the documents were kept. So there's a whole series of differences here, but there are. This is going to muddy the waters, and it's going to make it easy for Donald Trump to say, look, he had classified documents and he wasn't prosecuted. I had them and they prosecuted me. It's
Former
unequal.
Vice President Mike Pence had documents.
Yes. And by the way, there's another very important point, again, going through this, that at least some of these documents were classified at the very highest level of classification, top secret, sensitive, compartmentalized information, TS, SCI. That is the most sensitive, among the most sensitive secrets the U.S. government has, and at least some of the documents had markings up to that level that Biden had stored in his garage in Delaware.
And this also raises questions about sources and methods, too.
Yes,
right? I know we're still looking into it, but
yes. And you know, it's important to say that the decision was made here not to prosecute, and the special counsel in this case, special counsel Hur, said that part of it is, you know, he lays out the differences between what Biden did and what Trump did, but there's the context here, and I want to read another line here. In addition, Mr. Biden's memory was significantly limited, both during his recorded interviews with his ghostwriter in 2017 and in his interview with our office in 2023. And his cooperation with our investigation included by reporting to the government that the Afghan documents were in his Delaware garage will largely convince some jurors that he had made an innocent mistake rather than acting willfully, that is, with intent to break the law, as the statute requires. So again, to be prosecuted, the prosecutor has to make the case that he willfully had the documents and that he intended to break the law by misrepresenting what he had. So it's interesting here, part of the reason that they're making, this is on page 5 of this report, and it you know, makes the case that part of this is they'll say that his memory was simply faulty on this question.
We'll likely see some people seize on that moment on the campaign trail. We'll get more back into that in a little bit, John. Thank you. But I do want to go to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce, who's digging into all of this. And Mary, the key thing that we've heard from the Biden team repeatedly over and over again was that he cooperated with this investigation from the beginning, and he gave those documents back. What's the reaction you're hearing now?
Yeah, well, so far, no official reaction from the White House. You might actually hear the sound of a helicopter behind me. The president is about to depart the White House. We will see if he answers any questions out there on the South Lawn. But yes, to your point, the president and this White House have repeatedly stressed throughout all of this that they have cooperated with authorities, that they have been transparent through all of this. The president stressing that he takes classified documents very seriously. But of course, now the president, bottom line, has a lot of explaining to do, because he said repeatedly in last January, when all of this came to light, that he was surprised to learn that there were any government records at his private office here in Washington or at his private home, and that he didn't know what was in these documents. You'll recall the president at the time said flatly, you're going to find that there's nothing there. He said he had no regrets and that there is no there. Well, obviously, this report is raising some serious questions and concerns about what the president did know and what he did take, you know, finding that he willfully retained and disclosed classified information, though, of course, the report finds that they can't prove that beyond a reasonable doubt. And just to underscore that point, I want to call your attention to something on page 3 of the report here, referencing how the president was writing these books, these memoirs, with the help of a ghostwriter. And it calls out this instance. It says in a recorded conversation with one of those ghostwriters in February of 2017, about a month after he left office, Biden said, while referencing a 2009 memo, that he had just found all the classified stuff downstairs. The question is, that's a pretty, concerning and damning recollection there. The question is going to be, did the president remember any of this? How is he going to explain this, given that they have stressed over and over again that the president did nothing wrong, that he didn't recall taking any classified documents?